Now it's chapter 4, climate change. Climate change, obviously, before we already start, we already know that there's so much uncertainty. There's some people like Donald Trump that don't believe that humans participate in climate change, and others that believe that we are strongly impacting it. So what is a Quaternary period? Quaternary period was a period of time of 2.6 million years ago until now. It consisted of two epochs. Epochs just basically mean time periods. So it consisted of two of them. One was glacial, which was the spread of ice, but now we're in the interglacial period where the ice is thinning. So what is the evidence for climate change? Companies like NASA and MET office are obviously trying to collect data. We have proxy data, but proxy data is very unreliable. It uses like the natural indicators, for example, the ring around trees, to show how climate change has affected us. Others include ice cores. Ice cores, you can drill the hole. The older the ice, then the deeper the ice, the older it is. So you could drill it and you could collect the ice, or you can melt it to see the oxygen isotopes, the carbon, and other greenhouse gases, and compare it to now. You could do similar things with the ocean sediment, and obviously the deeper the sediment, then the older it is. And you could do the same thing. You could from this data you could see the surface water of the surface water temperature back in those days, or the plankton's diet, etc., and what nutrients were in the thing, and you could compare it to now. So why do people think it's a natural cause? Well, number one, we have natural orbit. So sometimes we orbit closer to the sun, so obviously that means we're going to get more heat and we're going to get more hotter. However, sometimes we're also on our axis, so sometimes it'll be colder, sometimes we could be hotter, and certain places experience more than others. Second cause is the solar output. So you can measure the sunspots, which are those black things on the sun, and then we can see that sometimes the sun gives out more energy and sometimes it gives us less. So obviously it's going to get hotter sometimes it's going to be cooler. The third one is volcanic activity. Sometimes so the volcanoes release methane, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and other greenhouse gases such as water vapor, and this temporarily increases climate change, and we have nothing to do with it. Some human causes include deforestation, cutting down of trees. We have cattle ranching and other agricultural methods such as slash and burn. And other ones include cattle ranching. Cows release methane due to their digestion, so obviously, and they contribute a lot. Another one is fossil fuels. Fossil fuels contribute to 50% of global warming, and last but not least, we have landfill and other waste. Again, when they don't decompose, or when they do, they release these greenhouse gases. So the natural greenhouse effect is basically when the insulation from the sun, so the energy from the sun, gets absorbed in, and this causes the earth to heat up, and most of the infrared radiation from the earth leaves, and some of it stays behind just to keep us warm and provides optimum temperatures for human life to thrive. However, in the enhanced version, so due to all those reasons, as I said, deforestation, cattle ranching, waste, and combustion of fossil fuels. Well, all these reasons, this means that the greenhouse layer gets thicker, so most of the energy from the sun gets absorbed, but it cannot leave, and this means that it gets hotter, and the climate change is contributing to climate change. Some effects include fishing declines because the fish are not becoming adapted fast enough for these rising surface temperature of waters. This means that economy declines, and other markets, so the bigger market. All these changes interlock, and others include migration of birds, extinction of species because they cannot become adapted fast enough. Others include rising sea levels due to the glaciers melting, which means flooding, and flood defences need to be built again, or you're putting impermeable surfaces and building. So this is a continuous cycle. Furthermore, we also have the drought or flooding cases. So mitigation is responding to the causes of climate change. Remember, this is not the same as adaptation. So mitigation is responding to the causes. Some reduction causes include planting trees. Well, trees, they absorb CO2 for photosynthesis. They also release O2 in the process. So obviously their carbon sinks and they take in that CO2. Others include international agreements, so putting caps and fines to anyone who exceeds the carbon limit, or or protecting the conservation of like green spaces. Others include using renewable energy, for example, solar energy, hydroelectric power, all these renewable sources that don't contribute to climate change. Others include the carbon capture and storage. So you're not letting carbon being released into the environment, but you're actually storing it for other purposes. Now we come to adaptation. Adaptation is responding to the impacts and reducing the impacts of climate change, because most people cannot do anything about it. So we have the change in agricultural systems. So instead of growing the same crop and over cultivating and leading to desertification, well, you can have crop rotation, which means that there's different crops that are taking different nutrients each time, and so that they won't degrade the land. Or you can also have drought resistant and disease resistant crops, which means that when climate change is at its worst, then you'll still be able to resiliate against that and survive. Others include water system changes. So sometimes we could increase water supply, or by having desalination plants, or we could decrease the supply by having retrofit plant packaging and water efficient devices, or we can have flood barriers. So that was all of your chapter 4 of climate change.